Welcome to episode 7 of Mission Critical Podcast. Today is the 18th of May, 2023. Remember, if you are watching or listening to this podcast, you are the resistance. All right, all you wonderful boys and girls. Hey, it's a new intro we're working on. Actually, I'm going to go online and see if I can find some kind of noisemaker that does the little Morse code thing, so it isn't my stupid noises going forward. But hey, welcome to this podcast. The subject for tonight, we are doing our formats a little differently, just if you haven't noticed, but we're getting better. But the format here now is just the intro I just did. I'm going to tell you the subject, and tonight's subject is it kind of harkens back to our last episode where we asked the question, should you trust the government? The focus of tonight's podcast is we're going to revisit that subject, but we kind of glossed over some recent examples. But tonight we're going to actually use those examples, and we're going to use those examples to say, hey, you should question everything. And we're going to use some very serious real examples that have real world implications for all of us, whether you're an American or wherever else you live in the world. But the focus is going to be exactly that. Before it was a question, should you question things? Now we're going to say, no, you should be questioning everything. You should question everything that goes on around you in the world today. We're going to provide you some examples that hopefully get your brain juices flowing and further, I don't want to say convince, but at least get you to think like, hey, those are some good points, and maybe I should be taking a quick peek around me. Before we get into introductions and the meat of it, though, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning. This is a giveaway podcast episode. So this episode, giveaway. The giveaway this time around, let's see if I can do this and make it look good, is going to be a hoodie.
Oh, yeah.
There it is right there. A hoodie from a local business here in the Duluth area called Marshall Hardware. The hoodie weight it's kind of like a early, like right now, spring. Well, I should say right now. Well, the weather where I live, it could be very different from where you live. But it's an early spring hoodie. It's not a really thick hoodie. It's not a winter weight hoodie, but it's an early spring, maybe late summer, early fall thickness hoodie. Marshall Hardware. Yeah. We will have a question. As always, the giveaway is based on a question. Redbeard will throw that out in a little bit here, and he can talk about that whenever he feels it's appropriate to talk about it. But that's the giveaway. It's a gray hoodie. It's got the Marshall Hardware logo. Yep. Just a quick plug for Marshall Hardware. They're a local business. They've been around since the 1930s. And I don't know what it's like for you boys and girls, but when I go to one of the big box stores and no one knows jack and or shit about anything to do with like anything construction or homeowning, that's not the case at Marshall Hardware. You walk in there, you are immediately greeted by one of the employees. You got a question on electrical or plumbing or whatever the hell it is. They know exactly where the component is in the store, and they've done it all themselves, so they can sit there and talk you through it as well. Great people.
And you're not just a number.
What's that?
You're not just a number.
You are not just a number. It's family owned and run. Great example of what small business in America should look like today. So that's to be the giveaway. Yeah. So here's to, well, they didn't give it to me. I'm actually buying the hoodie. So whoever wins it, we'll figure out your size and stuff. But I've already coordinated with them. So So here's to Marshall Hardware. All right. The other little piece of housekeeping before we jump into it is we might have a guest tonight. We're all human beings.
Yep.
Everybody's got a life. They got jobs, responsibilities, family, all that kind of stuff. The individual might show up. So just be prepared. And if they show up, we'll just call an audible and we'll just roll with it if they show up. So but we'll just see what happens. But if not, we are good to go. And without further ado, we are your hosts, your knuckle-headed hosts, although we have great beards. I am Mark, and this is
Redbeard, as always.
Take it away, brother.
All right. So, kind of like what Mark was saying is, we're going to kind of come back to that realm of, harkening off of our last episode, which is, like, should you trust government? And kind of like he mentioned, it's kind of a rather rhetorical question in the sense. And he did mention that we're going to, be taking some observations and bringing about important important conversation. See, I already can't speak, Mark. It's already started. But I just want to give you guys a rundown real quick of kind of the things that we are tentatively going to cover, and then we'll get into it. So the first area, or at least one of the subjects that we're going to have tonight, is going to be regarding Epstein, the list, and a lot of the very, very interesting happenings and goings on regarding that. I know Mark has a lot to say about that, and I can provide some filler, but this is one area that he's really been itching to dive into, and you can see that. You can kind of see that grin on his face. Another area that that is going to be brought up also is going to be the Roe versus Wade leak. And again, it's another area that, Mark really kind of wants to touch on. And so, I'm excited to have that conversation because there might be some stuff that I'm not aware of, and it'll bring up good conversation there.
Before you go further,
yeah.
I just want everybody to know the reason I want to talk about those two topics. The Roe v. Wade Supreme Court leak isn't in the news anymore. Epstein's back in the news because of some financial ties. But I want to talk about that from my perspective as a former intelligence officer. So I think 100%. There's some commentary there that I might be able to provide that may be of interest to some people, or at least raise some eyebrows. So
and honestly, like, even though that I co-host this, like, I'm always interested because it provides a different perspective that I that sometimes, like, I might not have even thought about. So we do have a couple other areas too that I feel is very pertinent, and some of them kind of tie into each other. But the first one that I'm also going to kind of bring up is the FBI. So for those of you who don't know, that there's two big things going on with the FBI right now. There's the Durham report that just came out, and we're going to be covering various things about that. But then there's also, oops, get myself back in here.
Yeah, sorry, I just changed the view on you. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. Just want to make sure that, there we go. But then there's also a hearing that's going on regarding whistleblowers. There's quite a bit surrounding that too, and it's in the egregiousness and the absolute ridiculousness as to why you probably shouldn't put your full faith and credit in the government apparatus. The second area that I want to kind of bring up and expound upon is actually it's a twofold thing. There's some things regarding Ukraine, but also we're going to be talking about the Bidens. And for those of you that are kind of aware, there's some happenings and goings on with the Bidens in Ukraine, and then there's other things that are regarding the Bidens and a nice little organization called the IRS that we will talk about today too. So it's a fully loaded podcast.
I just have to say, I really appreciate and respect how you just said the Bidens. You didn't say the Biden crime family or the Biden syndicate, because, and maybe this is a good segue to start jumping into it. So our previous episode, we said, we asked the question, should you or can you trust the government and government entities, government agencies? And this one, we're going to actually, as Jeremy just laid out, we have some examples of, well, you make your own call, but here are some, in my opinion, some, whether you want to call it common sense or legally speaking, pretty clear-cut examples of a two-tiered system of justice, or why you should be at least raising some eyebrows and scratching your head saying, hey, that doesn't make sense. Jeremy just did a kindness, if you will, because at the end of the day, it's like criminal activity is clearly taking place. Call a spade a spade. It's the Biden crime family. It's plain and simple, man. I mean, it's just like when we don't call her by her real name, we call her Killary. Like, come on, I don't know about you guys, boys and girls, but 2 + 2 does not equal potato in my world.
Although
2 + 3 still equals 4.
Garnering a little less tact, I would say culture, and a little less how you would say fashion than the mafia. Let's be honest, the mafia, they had their dress bueno, dude. Some of the most stylish looking dudes in the world. But I digress.
You're right. You're right. All right. So where do you want to start? Do you want to just jump right into it? You want me to start? What do you want to do?
Yeah, let's jump right into it. I would actually like to start with some of the first subjects, and I'll let you take it away, and I'll just kind of elaborate there. So,
all right. Well, then I'm going to start actually with Roe v. Wade. I'm going to kind of use the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court leak, and then I'm going to use that as a transition into the Epstein I don't even know if you want to call it a case, the abomination that is the Epstein, situation. So, we didn't really do any introductions here this time. You see the previous videos, but so I used to work in the CIA. I used to be an operations officer. As an operations officer, you have both training in how to conduct operations, how to recruit people, how to conduct clandestine or covert operations. But you also have, because the other side of that coin is counterintelligence. You're constantly on the lookout, because even when you recruit somebody, you really don't know what's going on in their brains, right? So you have all of these, I'll just call them steps, right? There's all of these steps and these techniques that you can apply, or the steps that you take and techniques that you apply to validate or vet. It's called vetting, to vet your source and to vet the information. So it's from that basis, I'm going to make the following assertion when it comes to Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. So there was a leak, right? And I don't really care where you come down on abortion. I know where I come down on abortion. I think, a life is a life. And if you disagree with that, then fine. We'll save that for another day, another conversation. That's not the point here. The point is that the Supreme Court made a ruling, and that ruling at that point in time is secret. And I don't know if they classified or how they classified, but that's definitely a not for official use, or I'm sorry, it's official use only type of classification. If it's not already secret, I mean, it might have a TS classification to it. I'm not sure. I'm not in that world. I'm not in the Supreme Court, but it's definitely classified, right? It's definitely something that the court, and up until recent years, has done a great job of keeping very tight control of and very secret, because they don't want that information to get out there and leak to the public before it's the proper time. So, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong. How many we have 9 Supreme Court justices, or is it 7, or is it 12? How many justices do we have again?
I believe it's
15.
9. I believe it's 9. If you're talking specifically just for the federal level.
Yeah, I was being a little facetious, because there's people who want to have 15 justices and all this stuff. But okay, that's actually, I didn't even mean it this way, but that's a great point. Let's just say that number for monkey math, it isn't 10, right? But let's just say it's 10 justices, and it'll make sense why I'm doing it this way. And everybody who wants America to turn over to metric will appreciate what I'm about to do, because metric works on the same exponential scale that I'm about to say. Let's say there's 10 justices, and every justice has 5 assistants, right? So do the math, right? So 10 times 5, that's 50. So there's now 60 people at that. So the first tier is 10 justices. The second tier is 50 associates or legal or whatever it might be, but people who are aides to the 10 justices. That's now 60 people. So if that's all there is, and I don't know the whole system. I mean, maybe it's more than that, and I'm sure it probably is. But you get my point. Right now, I already know there's only 60 people who had access to this information. So I could sit there and say, okay, well, first and foremost, what's that?
It's a lot of hands.
It's actually not that many hands, really, when it comes to, well, it is a lot, but it's not a lot. I mean, it's
not a lot in a grand scope, but a lot.
Yeah, great question. But in the grand scheme, it's only 60 people. I mean, think about this. So here's the point I'm making. If I'm going to investigate this and I need to find out who leaked this information, I hate to say it, but I'm probably going to exclude. I'm going to probably rule out the justices themselves from my initial dive in my counterintelligence, espionage, investigation to figure out who leaked this information. I'm probably not going to focus my attention on the justices themselves. Now, they are still suspect, but it's probably going to boil down to, okay, I've got 50 support staff or aides that I'm going to do it with, right? And then maybe there's another tier under that. That's why I broke it down into tens, and I'm trying to do a little bit metric, but you can see it'll be exponential. And if each of those 5 people have one more assistant, well, then there's another 50 people. Now we're at 110 people, right? Well, again, I already said I can knock off the justices from the beginning of my investigation at the very beginning. So there's 50 people plus maybe, there's 50 aides and maybe, an additional 50 who are 1 aides each, however you want to look at that. But you see what I'm getting at. There's a level to this. There's a tiered system. if I could go back in time today and have the resources that I knew were available to me 10 years ago. It's actually a little bit over 10 years ago when I was in the agency, but you see my point. What the tools available to me now are stronger than they were when I was in over a decade ago. But so I would actually start my investigation focusing on these 50 people. And then you can see, then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start breaking that down, right? I might have all 50 people come in for an initial interview. I might look at, well, the other thing is, what was the news media? What was the media outlet that released the information? I might actually start there and work backwards. Okay, let's just say, I'm just making this up. It was Mark's News Network that leaked the story. Okay, who is the reporter within Mark's News Network that leaked the story? That's my point of intersection. So somebody somewhere passed that information to that reporter. It is possible that there was a cutout and maybe it was really passed to somebody else within the news organization itself. Like maybe Jeremy and I work at Mark's News Network. Jeremy really received the information, but then he gave it to me and I'm the one who put my name on the report. That's a possibility, but we'll get to that later. But you first start, keep it simple, stupid. Occam's razor. Mark's the guy who's got his name on the title of the news story. So we'll start with Mark. I'm just going to look at Mark's phone records. And if Mark has any contact with any of the 50 people, see how easy this is? See where I'm getting at? It's not that hard. And I'm the government. I have all these resources available to me. I actually have enough investigators. I have the ability to look at everybody's phone records, their email records, because Jeremy, and this is really a rhetorical question for you, but it's really a question for the audience.
Yeah.
How would information be shared? Right? There's only there's a finite number of ways in which you can pass information to another human being. So, Jeremy, I could ask you what you think they are. But here, what do you think? How do you think if I'm the source of the info and you are the reporter, how can I share that information with you?
Well, so like the first thing that comes to mind, and maybe it's like really dated, but I don't think you can exclude the idea of like the human factor of like
don't overthink this. It literally just think of what are the forms of communication.
The human factor for me, like actually a person.
So it's a face-to-face meeting. So a face-to-face meeting is one way we could do it. What are some other ways?
So then you could use different back channels. Like
no, you're overthinking it.
Yeah.
I either have to meet you in person.
Yep.
I have to call you on the phone, or I have to send you an email.
Yeah.
I could send it to you via carrier pigeon, right? But you see what I'm saying? Like there are only a finite number of ways in which I can communicate, because so to your point, you might be thinking I'm trying to be tricky. You're talking about a cutout or a back channel. Okay. But that still is going to involve me emailing that person, calling that person, or meeting that person face to face. See what I'm getting at? No matter what, and unless we use smoke signals, carrier pigeons, other things, it's either going to be electronic in nature, and that could be an email, a text message. Now, there are all kinds of tricky ways that you can use modern communication, social media. But at the end of the day, it's going to reside in either a telephone or a computer, electronic channel, or it's going to be a face-to-face meeting, or it's going to be a letter or some type of, again, in the spy world, I could do a dead drop. I could have copied all these documents. I could have dropped them off at some location, called you. But see, I still need to communicate to you somehow.
There's still some factor there.
Yeah, and unless we were like dedicated intelligence officers, we're not going to be talking signal sites and there's all kinds of non-verbal communications ways that I could communicate to Jeremy that, hey, go to the certain place on a certain time and you're going to find a package and that's going to have all the documents. See what I'm getting at? That's a level of complexity that's usually reserved for actual spycraft. I'm pretty positive that whoever leaked this information probably wasn't a spy, right? And it really boiled down to the Occam's razor, keep it simple, stupid. Somebody either made a phone call, did an email, or had a face-to-face meeting. And all I'm trying to get at here is why you should be asking questions is here we are, how many months later? And they still don't know. And they claim they'll never be able to find out who leaked that information. Boys and girls, I'm here to tell you that's the biggest load of shit I've ever heard in my life. And I probably did a bad job because this is a subject that's dear to my heart. And I'm a little worked up over it. But I could have had that narrowed down to probably the top 3 suspects within 24 hours. And I'm not even talking with like all of the resources of the government. I'm just talking like even a small shop. If I had 10 people on my team, I could have had that nailed down to 3 people within 24 hours. And then within 72 hours, I would have had the suspect like, yep, no, it was Jeremy. And I would have known the mechanism by which he did it, you know, how he reported it to the reporter, you know, all of the stuff. Even if Jeremy was smart enough or scared and used a cutout, you know, Jeremy gave the information to his friend and his friend then went and turned it. See what I'm saying? I'm still going to figure out that Jeremy's friend was the one who gave it to the reporter. And, you know, so like say Jeremy's friend was named Bill. So I figure out that somebody named Bill gave the information to the reporter. Well, who's Bill? Once I start drilling down on Bill, I'll find out that Bill is Jeremy's friend and Jeremy is the staffer for one of the justices. It really is that simple. And I wanted to start with that. And I apologize. I'm a little animated. You're never supposed to get animated for, you know, when you're trying to do these type of, you know, shows or have these type of discussions. But this is my point. We easily could have figured this out and we easily could still figure this out. But by the fact that we don't know who leaked that information clearly indicates that it's a 2-tiered system of justice. And this current administration doesn't want to figure that out. Yeah. And that's going to be my segue into Epstein. But before I go there, I want to see if Jeremy's got any questions for me before I move on to Epstein. Jeremy, did that make sense what I just said about the Supreme Court and how you could so easily figure this out, especially given modern technology? And I'll just stop. This is my last comment. Yeah. I am also assuming that whoever leaked the information was somebody who didn't have the skills in the background, you know, or the background and skills and the knowledge that I have, right? Because, you know, I know if I was ever to leak information, there's no way all those things I just mentioned would never be a part of how I would communicate to anybody. And I'm not going to say how I would do it, but it wouldn't involve anything I just mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. And I think you actually I think the way that you broke it down too is really good because I think it kind of shows like how simple something can be in terms of passing information, if that makes sense. Like, look, you basically said, like, there's 3 primary avenues of approach, right? Like it's telephone, email, or you're meeting with that person. And even if you have a person that carries that information from you to whoever, like it still resides in one of 3 primary ways. And so I really like the way that you broke that down because I think it kind of creates a really good understanding for those who are listening, which is
and don't forget though, in the story, as you were kind of paraphrasing what I said, the other thing is you have to like, again, and I admitted I ruled out the justices, but you just here's the pool of people. Yeah, the number, whether it's 60, 50, 50, 60, 110, as we were doing that example. Yeah. But, 60 people sounds like a lot. It's actually not. You'll be weeding some people out. I mean, matter of fact, as you start looking at some of the files and you just look at the person's, bio data, because it's all there. They're federal employees or which justice they work. You'll start weeding some people out as like, it's not saying that they're innocent. You're just saying that the probability that this is the guilty party is lower. So I'm going to focus my attentions and energies on what I think is the most guilty party based on a set of criteria that you're going to make up as you're approaching the question at hand. And then if you go through like your top 40 and none of them seem to be the guilty party, well, then you're going to start narrowing it down and you might go through all, 50 of the, of all 50 of the subordinates. And you might be like, hey, I don't think it was any of them based on the preliminary data. Now I need to expand the scope to the Supremes themselves. You see what I'm saying? Like it's really, it's not that difficult. It really isn't at the end of the day. And especially if the government's doing it, because you can throw all kinds of resources and assets at it. So,
and so like, I think this was a great area to start off on because it really does. You brought up another good point. Like it's not that, like you said, it's not that they couldn't have found the person. It's more or less that they don't want to. And I think it's predicated on this one little simple saying, rules for thee, but not for me. Right. So they have, and I think that right there is I think that's one of the underlying themes of tonight is all of this stuff that goes on. If this was the average person doing this, we would be locked up and the key would be thrown away and we'd be left to rot for years. But because there's some form of exposure or some person in a government apparatus, it's like almost a protected class, if you want to consider it.
Because there's a protected political group of people. So hey, remember that point you just made, because I know when you get to talk about you just smiled when you talk about the FBI. See, but none of that applied, and so the full weight of the government and its capabilities is brought to bear here, but not brought to bear on something that's actually worth being brought to bear against. So. All right. So not to beat that one to death, or beat that horse to death. It's already dead. Hey, good to go. Can I move on to Epstein?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah.
All right.
100%. Let's do it. Let's kill it.
So my Epstein supposition is very simple, just like the leak of the Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court level. So first and foremost, I just want to ask everybody this question. And I might screw up her name a little bit, but Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell.
I think that's how it's pronounced.
So she has been formally charged and found guilty, and she's in jail. And she's been found guilty of, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, of trafficking human beings, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Sex trafficking, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Whoops. Hold on.
Well, okay, let's just say maybe Jeremy and I have the exact USC whatever code that she's been charged with. Let's say we have that slightly wrong, but a crime she has been charged with a crime.
I believe that's what the charges were for.
Okay, well, let's just say we're wrong. Let's just say whatever. It doesn't matter to my point. But she's been charged with a crime, and this crime has to do, and it's somewhere. She didn't get charged with tax evasion, is what I'm getting at, right? We know this. What's that?
She wasn't Capone,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, they used a different way to get him, but they knew what he was guilty of. They just found a different thing to send him to jail for. But in the case of Maxwell, that's not the case. They didn't say, okay, we're going to get you on RICO for money laundering and racketeering and stuff like this. Embedded in that whole charge is this kind of admission or this acknowledgement that human trafficking, sex trafficking, underage sex, sex with minors, these type of activities taking place. And this goes into the client list. This is my ultimate point. If she's guilty of having committed these crimes, then who did she work with to commit these crimes? Because how can she be guilty if everyone keeps saying that there is no client list or that information can never be made public? Well, if that information can't be made public, then how does the public have any trust in the legal system? Because we're supposed to know this. Like you're charging her with a crime, but you won't tell us the evidence upon which you found her guilty. Like, then how do we know she's actually guilty? That's point number one. Right. How do we know she's actually guilty if you're not willing to tell us what the heck it is that she's found guilty of? And the circumstances, whether they're, direct or extenuating, that, resulted in her being found guilty or a guilty charge being rendered against her. So that's one point to the whole, you definitely should be asking questions. You really should be opening your eyes and asking questions, because first and foremost, that's like if I get thrown in jail tomorrow and somebody says, well, Mark committed murder and that's why he's going to jail, but you never hear who I murdered. That's a better example or a better way of saying it. If I'm guilty of committing murder, well, who did I murder? Oh, we can't tell you that. Well, then how do we know that Mark actually did anything? That's how our legal system works. You have to you have to be able to say, oh no, Mark is guilty of killing the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Okay, and okay, well, how do we know? Because we're able to prove that here's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's body. Here's the beard comb that Mark used to saw through the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's throat, or whatever the hell the deal is, right? But in the absence of that information, then that's just like a star chamber. That's not our system of justice. That's not how it works here. So in the Epstein story, that's point one. Point two, which is kind of more of just a common sense thing, Jeffrey Epstein was approximately, I think, if I remember right, like 6'3" or 6'4". He was a pretty somewhat tall guy. He was, or maybe he wasn't quite 6'4", but he was over 6 feet. He supposedly committed suicide by strangulation. And so that's the means of his death. The mechanism, I'm sorry, that's the mechanism of his death. The means by which he brought about that death was a bunk bed and toilet paper. So a man who's over 6 feet tall. See, I don't even know. Thank you. You just ruined my, Jeremy is absolutely right. It's so laughable. And yet we're not authorized. We're not allowed to ask these questions. And I'm supposed to believe this story. Again, go see some of my Centerline Systems videos or our previous videos. You're pissing on my head and telling me it's raining.
Dude, it's like a bad Saturday morning cartoon skit. It's some Wile E. Coyote shit, right? Like, it's totally unbelievable.
Yeah, except Wile E. Coyote never was able to pull off a single one of his escapades. But a man who's over 6 feet tall used toilet paper to fashion a noose, and then he jumped off of a bunk bed that is smaller than his actual height. Like where his neck is, his neck is higher than the top part of the bunk.
With toilet paper.
And he used toilet paper. Now, on that note, if you know what you're doing, you can take a magazine and roll it up. And that's actually can be used as a defensive weapon. Same with a newspaper. There are things that you can do, but toilet paper isn't one of them, right? I mean, think about how much toilet paper you would have to wrap around your body to be able to protect yourself from like blunt force trauma or like a stabbing or an edge type of weapon. A shit ton, right? But a telephone book, a newspaper, these type of things. Yeah. Okay. But it's because there's so many layers, but they provide protection from a different type of, or a different mechanism of injury, a different way of being injured. He was able to strangulate himself by taking toilet paper and rolling it up somehow in such a way that he created some type of material stronger than a rope. And then he jumped off of a bed that is shorter than he is tall. And in his death throes, as he was being strangulated by this toilet paper noose, his natural inclination for survival didn't kick in, and he didn't just stand up.
Yeah, he didn't fight it. Yeah, weird.
Yeah, and we're supposed to believe this. So you have to start asking questions. And I'm not even going to get into the recent events of follow the money. And then because I need to turn this over to Jeremy. I'm kind of getting a little worked up, but this will play into some of the things Jeremy's going to talk about. Follow the money. If no one's paying attention to the news, and we were going to bring some slides up and talk about this, but you can do your own research. I mean, we're sitting here talking about this, but don't believe me. Don't believe Jeremy. Go look it up for yourself. But, a prominent bank that's part of the too big to fail, just settled out of court lawsuit. So, but we're supposed to believe that there was no pedophilia on the island. How can you look at this situation and not ask yourself, like, hang on a second, why am I being told the truth? Why isn't this client list? Why isn't this list of people who flew on his airplane? No, I'll be the first one to say, just because you flew on the airplane doesn't mean that you're guilty.
No, right.
But
it looks
however, comma, and then you start adding in all these other things. And part of the recent Epstein things that have to do with the bank is like, how did you enjoy Cinderella? Oh, it was awesome. What do you want next time? Oh, I want Beauty and the Beast. And this will be my final comment
let's not forget Pizzagate there too.
Well, and that's what thank you. And that's what I was just going to tie into. And I was going to use Pizzagate also, because everybody says, well, that's a nothing burger and that, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm just going to say to everybody. And I have to be careful. I mean, I have to be careful about sources and methods, But you can read between the lines and you can figure out that obviously, if this is what I did for my life and I was successful at it, and that you don't have to take my word, but I did recruit people. I was successful at recruiting people, and it's not an easy thing to do. And then once you recruit people, or if you are working with a source that somebody else recruited, you still have to maintain communications. And sometimes you're in an environment where the type of communications that you normally would use, you can't, because that would be too alerting or it's too difficult, or the asset just can't figure out how to use the technology. So you look at other ways to communicate openly, and still, in there's messages embedded into your sentences. So I can say this because this is all over the place of how to communicate and code, how to talk about things. And so the whole Pizzagate and that everything I just said, that conversation between the two bankers, or the banker and Epstein, that is another version of exactly what I did with people back at the height of our time in Iraq, for example, right? This is exactly the same way that Al Qaeda, whether that was Al Qaeda in, Iraq, AQIZ or AQIM, this is exactly how terrorists communicate with each other. They have their own way of saying things, whether it's, for example, hey, I need to come over and get a sheep from you because we're going to be doing this for this type of upcoming feast. All of those, that you make your conversation seem innocuous. Hey, how many pizzas do we want for this weekend? Or how many hot dogs? I want 400 pizzas and 600 hot dogs, whatever it is. 600 could mean 6, right? Because going back to the, using a system, taking it down 600 to get rid of the zeros, or only use the first letter or the first digit and get rid of the middle or the last. This is basic stuff. This is basic personal communications using a very rudimentary code type of system to it. So, and this is where I'm going to end because Jeremy, you just mentioned Pizzagate. Everybody's forgotten about Pizzagate. In my humble opinion, all the evidence was right there that crimes were being committed. I mean, heinous acts were being committed. You just have to be willing to open your eyes and actually hear and read, hear what you're being told, read the story for itself. People don't order pizza like that. People don't order hot dogs like that. People don't talk about Disney movies like that. Oh, how was your weekend? Oh, I really liked Cinderella. What the fuck does that mean? Right? You're like, oh, I liked Cinderella. Okay, well, that was probably code word. I can make some assumptions on what that means, but the one thing that's not an assumption is code. That they are speaking in code. And you could sit there and say, Mark, put your tinfoil hat on. And I really do need to make one of those days. You can sit there and say that to me all day long, but I did this stuff for real with other people when we were talking about how to capture bad guys. And bad guys did this when they were talking about how to kill Americans. So So I'm not going to buy that one. All right.
And I just to kind of put a little addition on here, you're talking about, the use of code words and stuff like that and code phrases. And it's like, I think that any entity that has like any basic level of sophistication is they're gonna do something to like try and thwart the efforts of people that are, are trying to figure out what the hell is going on, right? Like, am I wrong?
Yeah, well, in today's day and age, everybody knows. So this is open source. I'm not giving away anything because I'm not talking about actual sources and methods, but everybody knows that the government can monitor and listen in on whether it's your computer, your emails, your phone calls. I mean, that's a no-brainer. So I didn't give anything away there. I didn't violate any of my secrecy agreements that I signed. But so on that note, so if you're walking into this knowing that you are potentially going to be monitored, your communications are potentially going to be monitored. And if you don't have the skill and training, the one thing I won't say is there's a whole bunch of other ways to do this that are more sophisticated, require a lot more attention to detail, more training. And that's difficult to do maybe with somebody who, you're just meeting for a hookup with a bunch of minors to do some kinky ass sexual things on somebody's private island where they're, they're outside of the United States jurisdiction. See what I'm kind of getting at? If that was that a good enough answer? Was that you and I?
And that makes sense because it's again like if you're gonna have any remote level of seriousness or sophistication, like you're gonna try, I guess is like what I'm saying, and it's like and like you said, there are varying degrees of it depending on like where you're at, how much training you have, and so on and so forth. But like that answer.
And who are the people involved? I mean, you think about it.
100%.
Half of these guys who are suspected of being in there, and some names are starting to come out. But half of these people, these are very senior politicians, very senior businessmen. They don't have that background. They've never been in the military. So you have to keep it simple, stupid. So for example, this is how I interpret those emails with the guy from. I'm gonna hold off on saying it because I think that's still being litigated. So, but go do your own research. This is nothing groundbreaking, but it's
Right.
kind of starting to come out. Again, it's a major bank, one of the too big to fails. Well, okay, if this guy's kink was I only want to have sex with Disney characters, well then if I'm the guy who's organizing this, well then our communications are always going to have something to do with Disney. So you
Right.
always know that when we talk something Disney, I'm talking about your special kink that I'm going to provide
Yeah.
for you on my kink island. So that's really what it is right there.
Yeah.
And anyone who says otherwise is, I think, just fooling themselves, or it's one of maybe three things. They're either too naive and they're fooling themselves, or they're intentionally misrepresenting or misunderstanding, like again, the whole Pizzagate, like everybody, the media and a bunch of politicians turn that into like, oh, ha, 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 you guys are so silly. I'm like, why did you order so many pizzas?
Yeah.
Why are you talking in terms of food that clearly can be expressed in terms of men versus women?
It's not normal English.
Yeah, it's
or
totally
not-
exactly.
It's outside of the realms of like practical social communication. Like, dude, like those, like those extra large pizzas were just super good last night. It's like,
Yeah.
Why did you say it like that? Like that's just weird.
Yeah, because a normal person said, "Hey,
Yeah.
we had Carboni's pizza last night for the first time, and that
Right.
Carboni's is really good." But you wouldn't have said, "Oh, but those extra large ones were even
right.
better."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not how normal people talk. You just would have said,
and I think that some people like I might be wrong, but maybe some people are really just that dense to where they think that they're like they think that they're doing like the code thing and they give themselves away because they're like, oh boy, those pepperoni pizzas were super good, Carl? It's like, dude, like stop. Just stop. Okay.
Well, so to your point, and
Yeah.
then just to kind of wrap up on the Epstein examples is exactly that. People who don't have this back, well, hell, and in all fairness, I don't want to sidetrack us on some agency stories,
Yeah.
but there's people even within this world who still can't overcome their ego and their need for
Right.
they're like their need to be able to discuss it with somebody, or like, wink, wink, nod, nod, like
Right.
I can't tell you about this. Well, if you can't tell me about it, then so here, I'm just going to say this. I know exactly what I can and cannot say. And I'm clear to say that I used to work for an agency. It took me years to actually get that authorization, that approval. I know what I can and cannot say. I can say I used to work for the agency. If somebody isn't cleared, and this is the world you live in, whether it's in the Department of Defense, a different bureau, or the CIA or the NSA, something, you either have to live your cover story or you're able to say it. When somebody says, "Oh, I can't talk about that," then you've already violated your security agreement because you're not supposed to talk about it. So you had a cover story you were supposed to say, like, "Oh, no, you misunderstood, or you mistook me for somebody else. No, I work for this organization, or I was actually over there doing this. I think you're confused.
I was just the electrician."
Yeah, whatever your cover was. Like if your cover was like, "I work for McDonald's." Now we're kind of getting a little sidebarred.
Yep.
Actually, so I had an official cover. But the truth is, if I met you in a bar, for example, and I'd never met you before from Adam, and we were talking, and if you, out of your mouth, you would have said, "Hey, Mark, so what's it like being in the military?" Right? Because you just assumed I was in the military because of my body language, my persona, my hat. Well, guess what? I suddenly am in the military. Unless I was cultivating you as a target. If you were just some random person who I may have beers with every now and then, or see you in the local bar every now and then, or never see you again, whatever you thought I did, well, that suddenly became my cover story. Whether it was working in McDonald's to, and I'm using that for example. It's going to sound horrible to say, but I was very, very rarely was I ever back in the States long enough to have a meaningful relationship. I'm back in the States. I got a couple of weeks, and I meet this girl, and maybe that subconsciously is why this came up, is because she thought I was in Special Forces. I'm not in Special Forces. I didn't go through. I was in 20th Group for a while on the training team, but I'm not tabbed. I never went through the course. But to her, that's what she thought I was, and because of who I was and how I carried myself, so I never dissuaded her from that thought process. Because the truth was, I was like, it's highly unlikely I'm ever going to see this person ever again. And if it turns out this is somebody who I want to see again, then I'll start saying, "Hey, I know you think I'm in the Army, but I'm really this, and it wouldn't have been what I really did. it would have been my cover story. Does that make a little bit of sense? Because we kind of got sidebarred, but this is the level of nuance and attention to detail that somebody with the training and the experience will do. To our point, wrapping up again the Pizzagate, Epstein, and so many other examples, that isn't what those people live. They don't even have a modicum of that type of training and experience. So it's going to be broken down into things like pizza and hot dogs. You know, is your car working tonight? You know, shit like that. You know, or you know.
Should have seen Barney over there yesterday.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the, you know, that next showing of Beauty and the Beast. And after that, maybe we can do Pinocchio, you know, whatever weird.
Yeah, no, and actually to kind of wrap it up and end it on like that explanation, I think was like really showed like the difference and really amplified the difference between like, I don't necessarily want to say that everybody's an amateur, but like, the difference between people who like do something like that with a purpose versus people who are like, no, this guy's definitely a banker and he can't deviate from who he is, you know, like so. No, that was good, man, and I think you did really good on that. So,
well, I'm going to apologize to you and everybody else. That was kind of just like a verbal, you know, verbal vomit. I think that was some pent up. This whole Epstein thing has me so worked up. You know, Redbeard.
As it should, though.
I can't. All right. Hey, how about this? That was a long-winded Mark talking. How about I'm going to bring you up full screen. Is now maybe the time for the your question?
Let's do the thing for the giveaway.
Yeah. So how about giveaway, and then you segue right into because we're already at 45 minutes. So how about we do the giveaway and then you segue into, you know, we're not going to be able to cover all that. So why don't you, as you're doing the giveaway, figure out what you want to talk about, and then we'll go into that next. So I'm going to bring you up full screen for the giveaway. All right. You ready? All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Do it.
So as you saw, we have this awesome sweatshirt from Marshall.
I got to bring you both those as you're doing it. Okay. Just give me a second. Sorry. Keep talking. I'll just show the sweatshirt one more time.
Yeah. So we have this awesome sweatshirt by Marshall's. Again, it's a local store. They're really awesome people. I honestly, like, I dig it. I might even go and grab myself one, but it's good stuff. It's you know, really you got to support the local places, right, Mark? I mean, that's what America, you know, in my opinion, that it's the little guys that build up this country. So that being said, all right, so I'm going to pitch a question here for you guys. And, you know, and basically the way that this is going to go is, you know, I'll present the question and I want you guys to basically put forth your best foot, and and then we'll scroll through it and see what's going down, and we'll figure out who the winner is based off of who provides the best answer.
Hey, before you answer the question, and because this is only the second giveaway, so let's just say this one more time, and then we won't do this again. We know everybody's going to cheat. We know everybody's going to like jump 100%. On the internet and try to look things up. We acknowledge that. That's all right, because the real goal is to get you to actually, if you don't know the answer to what Jeremy is about to ask, then go do the research, and then because you'll learn something. And you can still give an answer, because there's always another degree to it. It isn't just the factual side of it. There's more to it, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay,
and
there we go.
And that's our big incentive is we just want everybody to kind of come away with a little bit more than what they came in with, right? So that being said, without further ado, here's the question we're going to pose, or rather the dialogue that we would like you to respond to. So basically, guys and gals, everybody, we all talk about the Second Amendment, right? Like, it's a very common conversation. However, as it pertains to the right to keep and bear arms, and forgive me, my brain doesn't work very well, so I have to look at my notes. But as it pertains to the Second Amendment, tell us how the Fourth Amendment either supports or weakens the Second Amendment, and basically explain your case, support it. Do the research, go and look, and really take the time to provide the best answer you possibly can. You know, I'm not going to give anything away, But here's the thing, right? Mark kind of covered it earlier. If you have to go back, take a look in the very beginning when we started our discussion. But look, private property is a big deal, right? And things that we own are part of that. So without further ado, I'm not going to get too far down, but as it pertains to the Second Amendment, does the Fourth Amendment support or weaken the Second Amendment? And explain your case and provide supporting arguments. So that, what do you think, Mark?
Dude, out of the park, home run, crack of the bat.
Awesome.
Keep going.
Heck yeah. So, all right. So those of you 100% like support or basically put out your best comment, and we will make sure to go through those after after you guys drop your comments, and we will find the best comment, and may all the luck be with you guys. So
right. Hey, before you go into your thing,
yeah,
just a quick thing, because
yep.
I went way longer than we anticipated.
Yeah.
So if we pull an audible here, so you just did the giveaway. How about this? As I'm talking, I'll try to slow this for like 30 seconds. Maybe pick your top 1 or 2 things to discuss.
Yep.
Let's still try to get this in about an hour and 15 minutes. We're at 50 minutes right now. Yep. So I'm going to bring it up to you. You run with it. Unfortunately, the way I ran with mine. So maybe we won't cover every subject, but I'm sure you already have the ones that are dearest to your heart.
The ones that I think.
Okay, you see what I'm doing? Let's go in that direction, then we'll start going into. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
All right, so the one that I'm going to go with, I think more than anything, just because it's very recent, it's very pertinent. So look, there's obviously a lot going down as it pertains to the FBI. There's a lot of stuff that's really not doing, for lack of a better way of saying it, the FBI justice. I would say it's putting quite a black eye on the agency. And to be fair, like anybody who's been following some of this, you might say it's well deserved. So the first area is there's the Durham report. And essentially, just to kind of summarize, and I may, forgive me, but I may overlook some areas. It does happen. But I know one of the biggest talking points was the idea that there was like no real investigatory process in this whole thing, right? It was just one of those things that when the FBI was going through and they were looking at Trump and the connections with Russia and all of these different things going on and so on and so forth, like it wasn't even, they didn't even follow like the processes that they're supposed to do as part of the Justice Department, right? Like the whole, like the primary thing that you're supposed to do first and foremost is open an investigation, follow the procedures of an investigation, and then come to a determination based off of the evidence that's present, and be able to make a case and be like, look, like this is what went down. Here's the evidence to support what we believe, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the most damning portions, at least from what I'm aware of for the Durham report, is there was a lack of this process. It's like, okay, so you're now, Mark, tell me if this makes sense. If you're the Federal Bureau of Investigation, did you just not show up on the day of the investigation, or am I missing something?
I'm sorry. I was sick with the flu that day when it was taught at the academy, and I missed that day of training.
Were they at Epstein's Island instead of in the office?
Well done, sir. Well done. Well done.
Yeah, but it's just it's just one of those things though, to where it's like that was one thing that really was like people seem to be baffled about, because it was just one of those things like, oh yeah, like Trump, Russia, it like they spun this as like the most slam dunk thing, and they ran it through, and everybody's just like, dude, like where's the evidence? Where's the supporting evidence to even make a case or support the claims, And I don't know if you've heard anything more about this, Mark, but do you have anything to elaborate on?
I think the one thing I would add to this is unfortunately something that breaks my heart, and I'm absolutely Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm angry, if I'm stupefied. I don't really know how to say it. It's like, okay, so this report is out, and that was an intentional silence. I should, matter of fact, I'll get another noisemaker that makes the sound of a cricket. I mean, it's crickets. It's crickets after that. Like, my God in heaven, there is so much evidence, like of malfeasance. I mean, and law breaking. I mean, like, and yet it's still freaking crickets.
Yeah.
And that's what breaks my heart. And Jeremy, you said it earlier in the episode. You talked about the two-tiered system of justice.
Yeah.
So my only comment to your question is, boys and girls, listen to what Jeremy's saying and just think for yourself. Like, if that would have been you, do you think you'd be sitting here in this situation, and nothing here, some legal entity finds all this evidence of your wrongdoing and you're not in jail yet, or no one's even being fired.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no ramifications. There's no consequences whatsoever. And it's really stupefying. And here's what I want people to, look, to a certain degree, like, you have to, I know that there's possibly going to be people that are going to focus on, like, well, it's Trump. Like, at this point, like, look, we need to evaluate this on literally, the FBI didn't even do the last portion of the job that's in their description.
Well, like, or Jeremy, but according to the Durham report, I mean, it's even worse than that. I mean, not only did they not do their job, but if we believe the report, right, and this is a legal document, right? So, it's if it's found out that Durham falsified his, then he's the one who's going to go to jail, right? And he should. But that's just it. Not only did they not do their job, but as you've pointed out, they suppressed information. Yeah. They had all the info they needed to go in the proper direction, and they didn't do it. And there are FBI field officers out right now who've reported in saying, hey, we brought this up. I'm not a big believer of it's all the senior ranking guys. Like, no, if you're in the FBI and somebody who's in your chain of command is intentionally, at that point, that's breaking the law. Yeah. Dude, if you don't do anything, you're just as guilty. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
All I was trying to say, I'm sorry, I kind of got sidetracked.
No, yeah.
But we know that there were field officers who were trying to bring this stuff forward, and they were being told not to do it anymore or to be quiet. And whether that was about Hillary or about the Biden, crime family.
So actually this very nicely segues into the next portion, which outside of the Durham report, there was a hearing at least today, and I believe it's going to be a continuous ongoing thing, of several FBI whistleblowers who did bring this up. Like the Durham report was actually brought up during this hearing today, and I don't know if anybody had happened to catch this, but basically the way that these whistleblowers explained it is they're like, look, like there's a lot of stuff that went on, like a lot of like shit that otherwise would not, like, it's not legal, right? Like there's no the idea of this double-edged sword of like, oh, like we know that this is the line you shouldn't cross, but at the same time we don't really care about that line, so we're going to cross it anyways, and they'll move the goalposts. And as soon as, like, some of these guys said, and I believe one of the guys' name is O'Boyle, I believe, and Friend are two guys that predominantly spoke when I was watching the hearing for a while today. Both of them were just like, dude, like, you go to speak out about things that are going on, about suppressing evidence, about suppressing, like, even finding the truth, about even being a person that wants to, like, do their job the way that they're supposed to do their job, because they believe that what they're there to do is the right thing, right? And dude, these guys got eaten up and spit out to a point to where, like, one of the guys, I don't remember which one it was that was talking, but he literally had, like, he went to go move for the job that he was hired to do, and they, like, held his stuff for over 6 weeks. They held his private possessions for like 6 weeks, I believe, is what he said. And it's like, that is absolutely insane. So, and not only that, like he was saying, he's like, look, this is the type of thing to where it's malicious to the point to where, like, you may never be able to find a job. you may be blacklisted. You might be like, he's like, look, this is, if
Well,
they're going to do this to us,
hey,
what do you think they're going to do to you?
Well, oh, yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to. Oh, I did. I
Yeah.
was trying to
Go for
interrupt,
it. Yeah.
but I like where you descended. If they're doing
Yeah.
this to us, think of what they're going to do to you.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to add to, and this would be honestly needs to be held for a different podcast. You know this. I've wanted to write a book since I left the agency, and the book was Lessons in Leadership, because what Jeremy is just describing, if like, we all know this happens. We all know these petty little squabbles, and you got a shitty boss who's not a leader. They're a boss, you know, a bad manager. This happens in every entity, in every organization
100%.
out there. It's not supposed to happen in the entities that are representing the tip of the spear. Like, that should be a higher quality of individual who actually has morals and principles, who believes, like, you raise your right hand and say you solemnly swear. And you know, so I just had to throw that out there, Jeremy, because like, that is the stuff, like, I don't know those individuals, but I know what they went through, because I could tell my own stories of that same exact kind of bullshit. But we're talking about stuff at the level of like where there shouldn't be any bullshit. I mean, we're talking where like that bullshit can get people killed, or in this case, a case doesn't get prosecuted and people are walking around committing crimes. Hey, we're at an hour, and I just kind of sidebarred us. But if you're willing to do this, again, another audible, how about, let's just kind of wrap this up within the next 15 minutes, but how about you take us out on the Biden crime family? If you want, I specifically want to just simply point out, again, this two standards of Hunter Biden and all the crimes he's committed, and he's not in jail. But if you and I would have done even one of those things, well, so to me, that's the same thing with Hillary. Like, if I would have done even just 1/10 of what she did when I was in the agency, I would have lost my fucking, at a minimum, best case scenario, I would have lost my clearance and I would have lost my job. That would have been my best case scenario. If I would have been
a slap on the wrist.
No, that would have been huge for me. But she didn't even get a slap on the wrist. I mean, So you want to take us out on that? I mean, or get us towards the outro on that.
I will touch on that. I'm just going to wrap it up with one more thing that one of the whistleblowers had mentioned. I believe it was Friend who had made who had made commentary, and he's like, so one of the questions that was asked is like, you know, like, look, like, were you able to, you know, when you did your job, like, were you able to like actually do your job, and were you able to do this? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, like, you said that, I believe he said, you said that your job was basically to try and catch like predators, right? And he's like, yes, absolutely. He's like, of those cases of child predators and stuff like that, of all the cases that you investigated, how many of them were actually got anywhere? He's like, I would submit the cases, and he's like, I was told not to worry about it. It would be passed on to somebody else. And he's like, I have no idea what happened to it after that. He's like, and you'd never hear about it again. So look, like, in the end of the day, if there's ever a question of whether or not you can trust your government, especially the same government that talks so highly about kids, dude, like, his testimony basically said in the area of operation that he was in, he was bringing these child predators to building cases, and it would go nowhere. So think about that, and this is a man who's basically being dismantled at every level by the same organization he built these cases for. That was supposed to do the right thing.
Hey, if I can, let me just take your final point and then just put it into a slightly broader perspective. Listen to what Jeremy just said, boys and girls. Here's an individual from the inside who's saying, hey, I would build this case, and then my superiors would do nothing with it. I have, and it would be pigeonholed and Look at all these other crimes that you and I both know are crimes. You and I both know, even if they're wrong, they're immoral, there are definite crimes being perpetrated here. And that's maybe the point of this podcast, is we're trying to use just a few examples of this is clearly wrong. At a minimum, it's immoral. And morality is perhaps fluid depending on, but I would make an argument that that's not true either, but we'll save that for a separate podcast. But if nothing else, it is definitely illegal. It goes against our Constitution, some USC, United States Code, X, Y, and Z. And to Jeremy's point, I mean, that highlights it. Now take that thought process and look at the broader spectrum of things that are going on in our society today. Everything from illegal immigration to, abortion to healthcare to COVID. See where I'm going with this? Like all of this stuff is going on. And take a step back and say, hang on a second. Don't we already have a law that says this? Then so why didn't that just happen? Look, again, I bring up Hillary Clinton because that's another one that really sticks in my crown. I guess I can't keep my mouth shut. I mean, Hillary Clinton was subpoenaed. They said, "Hey, don't destroy that evidence. That evidence is not going to be used, in a court of law."
Nope.
And she destroyed it anyway.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is a fucking crime.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if the evidence that she destroyed was meaningless evidence. That isn't the point.
Yeah.
She had a court order saying, "Don't touch your laptops. We want your laptops." And then, so that I think is the point Jeremy's making, when he's telling the story about the whistleblower. This is what's happening, and this is getting worse with each passing year. So,
So
I just love that point, Jeremy, because I think that's really, to me, that is the essence of what we're trying to say is like, look at the news around you and ask yourself, if that was you, if you just, Joe and Jane Citizen, what would have been the outcome? Would you have had the same outcome? Would you have experienced the same? Would you have had the same experience? And I don't want to. We kind of just. I'm sorry. I'm not saying we're running out of time. Trained to standards or trained to standards, not to time. But with us trying to keep these shorter. I know you wanted to talk about the FBI and everything that coming out from the whistleblowers that
there's so much. I would just tell people, like, look, if you didn't see the hearing today, go find the hearing, watch it for yourself. It will blow. Pardon my French, but it will blow your fucking mind. Like if it doesn't make you sick by the end of it, and just the level of persecution these dudes go through, and I'm not saying they're clean. I'm not saying their hands are clean. I'm just saying, like, dude, like, they're eating their own hard. And if you can't pick up on that and how they're going to treat you, like, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to convince you otherwise.
There it is.
So,
if you don't see the storm that's going to be pouring down over your head, if you're in the crosshairs,
I will say, like, the world does need whistleblowers, 100%. We need people coming out.
But Jeremy, I also thought we were supposed to respect whistleblowers and trust and listen to whistleblowers. But now that whistleblowers are actually pointing out all these other crimes that have been being perpetrated against the American citizenry for the last, 10 years or so. But now suddenly whistleblowers are evil people and we have to shut them up. I thought we were supposed to love and respect whistleblowers.
Yeah, if it supports one side or the other.
There it is. Well, but here's the big difference. And this is, call it a bias, or I'll just call it my personal perspective based on the facts as I've read them. Well, some quote unquote whistleblowers were paid opposition. And to your point, but other people are like, actually, no, I'm just trying to do the right thing because I actually love my job. There is a huge difference, so, and then I love how well, I digress. All right. So, hey, we're at, I almost just said 1:08.
You do it every day.
I don't know why. I'm serious. I don't know why that's my thing. It's something, it's how it's displayed on my side.
We're at 1:08.
Yeah, we're at 1:08, boys and girls. Hey, Jeremy, let's talk for another hour. But seriously, so we're at an hour 8. How do you want to take us out here? Do we want to? I think we will be remiss if we don't bring up the Biden crime family.
I think we should. And I think we can go over it pretty quick because there's a lot there, but I think we can kind of fluff it up decent.
It also goes into the other thing, like we're basically going to tell people that the sun rises in the east. I mean, we're going to be telling people what everybody should already know. So I'm going to bring you solo, and then why don't you start us off on that, get us going, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. So basically, like, there's a lot of content, and I know that some of the most pertinent stuff, and I know you guys might be getting sick of this, but look, there's a lot of stuff regarding the Bidens as it pertains to their dirty laundry as it concerns Ukraine. It seems like there's a lot of stuff that's muddled, whether it's Hunter Biden, whether it's Joseph Biden, or whomever it may concern it, but Hunter and his father, the two predominant people, seem to have some fairly scandalous ventures as it pertains to the dealings in Ukraine. And I do think that 100% should definitely affect whether or not we get involved with Ukraine to begin with. And that notwithstanding, Hunter, from an article I had read earlier today, I believe it was earlier today, the IRS, it was the tax inspectors were called off, and tax investigators were called off and told not to investigate any further into Hunter Biden's tax.
It's business dealings
and,
and the tax.
and it's like, okay, so you have really shady dealings as it pertains to Ukraine, which is very convenient for the last year, and now you're having the people that literally follow the money not follow the money. So what like at this juncture, like what the hell are they hiding? Like, because at this point you can't tell me it's because like, oh, there's nothing there. It's like, oh, you 100%. My deduction from this is there's stuff there that they don't want these people to find, and because that's their job. And so they're like, nope, don't look over here. There's nothing to see over here. It's not pertinent to anything regarding this subject. So I don't know if do you have something else to elaborate on there, Mark?
Well, I do want to give just one quick little statement, and it's and I think so. In order to not recreate the wheel, so if whoever's watching this, whether you have or have not watched Dan Bongino, go and watch. Go look up some of Bongino's episodes pertaining to Ukraine and the Biden family. Bongino has written books on this.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to lie. It almost needs to be, if you're going to write a thesis on this issue, you would have to have Bongino in your footnotes, because this man has spent a lot of time and money and energy researching this issue. And if you want to know the names, and if you want to know all the dates and the significance and the interactions, literally, honestly, we can't do any justice to it. I mean, like, he has researched the shit out of this stuff. And again, it's out there. And I think to the point of this podcast, once you start hearing these things, like, so see, I want to start sidebarring. It's like, it's always the same four people. It's always the same, whether it's this thing or it's the same. So there's a nexus there, and that goes into our previous comments. Like, this is how these type of operations work. I mean, this is how you control it. Control it, and by controlling it, I'm not just talking about a narrative. I'm also talking about controlling an operation, conducting an operation, making sure an operation is going in the direction you want it to be. It's going to be some of the same people in those positions of authority or leadership, however you want to phrase that, that are going to be like pushing that ball forward. So I would just say that in response is like, we're not doing it. We're kind of skipping it over because we're trying to keep these podcasts, under the Joe Rogan level of length of time. But also, again, we're trying to stay to standards, not to time. But just if you think Jeremy and I are just full of shit, and maybe you think Bongino's full of shit, but here's the thing: to use to paraphrase, one of his lines is like, he always brings the receipts. There it is, right there. He is presenting you the facts, and sometimes the facts are coming from quote unquote left wing outlets. Go read his book or listen to some of his podcasts on this topic. The whole thing in Ukraine when it comes to the Biden crime family, and it isn't just the Bidens, by the way.
Oh no, there's a laundry list of people.
Yeah. Well, and Jeremy, to tell the truth, I mean, like, I think, in all fairness to you, I mean, like, I didn't want to talk about Ukraine, but look, the reality is maybe we can't escape talking about Ukraine because
it's unavoidable.
Everything that's going on. Yeah, there's got to be something else that's compelling this and pushing it forward. So maybe we need to maybe I need to do a better job of just saying, we're going to have a conversation and Ukraine's going to come up into it.
Yeah. And I do, like, I think, because there's so much that's and I hate to say this, but it's like, I think because there's so much, whether it's literally the security of our country, whether it's the NATO thing, whether it's the Biden thing, whatever, like there's literally
whether it's
guys,
the graft and
look,
corruption,
look,
and
like,
it isn't just the Bidens who are making a shit ton of money off Ukraine.
there's
A lot of people, to
literally,
include people from the EU. I mean, this
yeah,
is huge.
like guys, like guys and gals, like think about it this way. At this juncture, there's so many things for what, and if you really think about it, there's so many things funneling into Ukraine that it makes it sus as hell. Like the fact that we like, where's the money? Oh well, we tag all of the, you know, we have receipts and we tag this, and like the weapons, like, oh, we tag the weapons and this, that, and the other thing. Okay, like so where is it? Like, oh well, we can't track everything. So it's like, dude, you either can track it or you can't track it. Like, okay, like we like, oh, like the Bidens don't have, you know, they don't have these ties, but then yeah, they kind of do, but it's not what you think. It's like, so do they or do they not? Like it's one of those things to where whether it's our national security, which I hate even saying that, but it's like, look, whether it's us getting into the threat of a conflict that we don't need to be in, or whether it's the integrity of those that are in office, there's so much going to Ukraine. It is becoming unavoidable talking about this. And if that in and of itself, look, this is nothing against the people of Ukraine, but what it is if it doesn't at least throw some level of like questioning about the integrity of the government in Ukraine, and this is where I think we need to have a separate episode about this, because there's a lot to unpack there. But look,
hey,
guys,
no, there's just no, end it right there. No, you're absolutely right.
Let's there's so much, too much.
Yeah. So I want to bring it kind of just my last closing comment, and you get a chance to respond to it. So let me give one last closing comment. You respond to it, and then you do an outro. But I want to bring it back to the Bidens. And so again, the gist of this podcast is we're giving you some, whether you want to call it subjective, objective, you know, anecdotal, however you want to phrase our commentary here tonight. Again, I beseech you, do your own research and look it up. And I'm going to end on this thing: is Hunter Biden is on video committing crimes, and Hunter Biden is still a free man walking the streets. Yeah. Like, if I'm on video smoking crack, what do you think? Where do you think I'm going to be tomorrow? I'm going to be in the Huskow. If I'm on video, or if I have an email, you know, and well, for example, Jeremy, you know, part of the podcast, you know, Jeremy and I are both believe in the Constitution. The Second Amendment is part of that Constitution. Owning a weapon, whether, you know, you want to argue right or wrong how it's dealt with within each state, but Hunter Biden, Jeremy's already laughing. Hunter Biden has demonstrated in the most physical ways possible, you know, video, that he has a weapon and he's not authorized to have a weapon. Where's Hunter Biden? Matter of fact, there's been people from Jeremy, you can maybe give some names to this. I don't know all their names, but I know there was some ATF guy being grilled in some Senate thing, and some, you know, God bless this person. I don't know if they were Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter. That's the politician we need in America. It's like, hey, so what, you know, they asked the question. It was a clear setup, and you can see it coming from left field. Like, hey, so if somebody does this, this, and this, is that a crime? Yes, it is. Well, then how come Hunter Biden's not in jail? And then it was like, you know, point of order, and everybody tries to shut it up. But that is the ultimate point. He's committed a crime. He's guilty of crimes. And how is he not in jail? So two-tiered system of justice, political malfeasance, you know, legal malfeasance. I mean, there's all kinds of issues. And that is my final comment right there. Is like, boys and girls, you need to wake up. You need to start paying attention, do your own research, formulate your own opinions. But if you walk away from that experience, from that journey, if you walk away from that journey, and if your eyes aren't open, if you're not looking left and right, and if you're not saying WTF, then I guess start speaking Mandarin. I guess, I don't know. That's my last thing. Right. All right, Jeremy, a rebuttal response to that, and then an outro. And I'm bringing you up full screen, sir.
Yeah, no, you know, like, I guess, like, just to kind of bring to some form of conclusion here, like, the primary objective, right, is like, we're just presenting more or less, like, we presented certain subjects that, like, as it pertains to like the credibility and whether or not you should trust government is we just want you to sit there and like take it in. You, like we've said before, you don't have to believe what we say. We just want you literally just to stew and ruminate on it a little bit, and ask yourself the honest question after go listening to this and after taking some time and looking more into this. Do you feel that the government is trustworthy? And how you come to that conclusion, regardless of what your conclusion is, like, look, like that's all we're asking you to do is like take a long, hard look and be like, can you trust this apparatus, right? So, oh hi, Russ.
Hey.
No, hey,
So,
keep going, Jeremy. We'll delay it just a little bit.
yeah.
Keep going.
So it's and that's the biggest thing, right? Is like we just want everybody to do their due diligence, ask the questions. Like, don't just simply go with the status quo, but just ask the questions. Look, we have a duty and responsibility in how things play out in this country more than people realize.
See the ticker. See the ticker.
Yeah.
Everybody read the damn ticker
and,
that's been going across the bottom of your screen.
Right. And
Read
it's look, we have a responsibility in order to fix the government. We have to be honest with ourselves and question everything that happens, right? Like, dude, this is, I think what this country needs is a solidified 12-step AA program to where we first have to be honest. Do we have a problem? 100% we do. And then after we admit that we have a problem, we can start asking the honest questions of like, look.
I like your 12-step. Here, another audible. Audible at the very end of the podcast. So,
yes,
boys and girls, if you're watching this, we are joined by the one and the only Russ, who has a life and his life, keeps him pretty busy. But he made it at the end. We'll bring Russ on another time. But here's what I would like to do, Jeremy, with your permission.
Yeah.
Why don't Russ may have been listening? I only just saw him a second ago in the lobby there, so I brought him in. Russ, we're wrapping it up right now, sir. By the way, hey, look, you're looking pretty Rico.
I was gonna say,
now.
you look pretty Rico,
clean shaven, and your hair's all nice.
God
dude.
damn.
Nice.
And another
comes in and steals the show at the end.
Well, hey, Jeremy, right now, Russ is just another pretty face, though, because he hasn't said anything in this conversation. So how
he
about
doesn't have to? Look at that smile.
not with that hair, dude. Look at that. Boom. That's coming from a guy who can't grow hair, Russ. So that's just
we'll just keep it
okay. Hey, how about this? I don't know if you know what we were talking about. I don't know what you heard at the end, but Jeremy, with your permission, how about we give Russ the floor for a couple minutes? And Russ, we really, as all of our conversations, we had a game plan and we went in a different direction kind of, and then we talked about things and we didn't cover everything. But at the end of the day, the gist of this podcast was kind of a following up of a follow-up to our last one, where we asked the question, can you or should you trust the government? This one was more of like, no, you should be eyes open and you should be questioning everything. And we just went through a whole litany of examples. Well, actually, we only went through like about 4 examples because I kind of started rambling and Jeremy started throwing punches and, it was all kinds of crazy, but so, hey, but you got the floor for, you're here now. So join us. What do you want to say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would really actually just like to double down on that. I feel like there is a lot of folks who will kind of turn off their brains or their ears when something that has been, when you start to quote someone that's over 100 years quoted, right? Like there's kind of this diminishing return sometimes when you throw around weighty quotes and examples, because folks like new shiny things. But really, I mean, aside from any kind of examples, far removed or recent history, the end result is with any government, with any control that another person has over your life, you should always be antagonistic to it. And I don't mean violently. I don't mean I don't mean just for the sake of doing it maliciously. I mean, you should constantly be uh, probing and pushing back and calling for accountability and questioning everything that is done when it's done by somebody who is over you and may or may not have had your say so for it. And
Mhm.
and I don't mean to draw a parallel that isn't fair, but I think that one that is very striking that I think everybody has the mental bandwidth to kind of draw the parallels between is in an a in a relationship with another person that is not that's parasitic, right? Like think of
Mhm.
serfdom or
Yeah.
slavery or
Yep.
Yeah.
anything like that. Like those people have power over another person. One person has power over another person. They didn't ask for it. They didn't want it. And all too often there's this kind of desire to play victim with something like that. But it shouldn't be. You should constantly be challenging that. It's
But
your
you just
job.
Yeah.
you just pointed out the huge difference there, right? Like, so there's voluntary and involuntary servitude,
Yeah.
right? I
Mhm.
volunteered to in essence be in servitude for the vast majority of my life, with both in the military and in the agency.
Mhm.
But I volunteered. But that dichotomy, of that power balance is something that it's different from, hey, I just woke up one day and now I'm on your plantation and you're whipping me or something.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's the difference.
totally.
Yep.
And to
Mhm.
your point, though, I loved what you said, because I hadn't even thought about this in a long time. And this isn't a look at me, but I love what you said, because my thing used to be to some of my subordinates was, hey, I want you to challenge and question up to the
Yes.
point of insubordination. Like,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
to your point, you only do that with smart people. Like if we're in the middle of a combat operation, that's not the time for you to be second guessing, right? But as we're in the planning phase, you're like, hey, Mark, maybe we should go left instead of going right. And here's the
Mhm.
reason
Yeah.
why I think we should do what you see what I'm saying?
Well, and to a degree, I'd like to challenge you on that because I feel like like you use the combat as an
Well, no,
example,
no, no,
and that is
yeah, but in all fairness, but in combat, if we're in the middle of a fight and you're on my left flank and you see something developing on the left flank that I don't see,
right.
that's not insubordinate. That's different.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where
Yeah.
you're going. Like, oh no,
No, I just wanted to kind of clarify that like there's no situation where it's just no holds barred. You
yeah,
have to do
Mhm.
correct.
exactly what you're told every time. That is never ever the case. Another good example that I think is it's a little more grounded than this grandiose example of like, serfdom or whatever, or like you said, like a unwilling servitude. Now I am religious in a lot of different ways, but not in the sense that I belong to any one religion. But
Mhm.
I live in the Bible Belt, right? I live in Texas, and despite how Texas's evolution recently, for many reasons, we still have a lot of uh, things in everyday life that are that affect us regardless of where you come from and what you believe. And just a good example that's really passive, it's not that big of a deal. I can't buy alcohol in the morning on Sundays.
Mhm.
That's not that big of a deal, but I am constantly challenging every time I get a chance to be heard about it. Why?
Yeah,
It's not my religion. Why am I restricted from doing anything that
that's
is that
correct.
is
Yeah.
allowable at any other time because somebody else doesn't believe in that?
Yep.
Yep.
That is not fair, and that deserves to be challenged.
Yep.
And I want to respond to that, but unfortunately, I think if I do, we're going to end up talking for 4 hours. But for the record,
Yeah.
is where I left. I'm 100% on your side with that argument,
Yeah.
but I'll be devil's advocate from a different perspective. But bringing this back full circle to what Jeremy was just talking about, right as you were, coming into the lobby, this is, in my opinion, for everybody watching, and this is, this is the point we're trying to make to you. And this is one of the main motivations that why I want to do this podcast is right to your point, Russ. I mean, it's like, no, if we believe in freedom and we believe in liberty and we believe in maintaining or limiting government, and government overreach, oversteps, like, well, what does it matter if it's Sunday? Well, okay, I know, I get it. Our laws are based on the Judeo-Christian, but what if I was, Muslim or maybe that's a bad example because technically you shouldn't be drinking, but whatever.
Well,
you see my point. Exactly.
Depends on the degree, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. No, I'm eating white beef. That's what it is. I'm eating the white beef, as opposed to pork. But that's what actually some people would ask. Hey, could you bring me white? Hey, next time at our next meeting, could you have some white beef? I'm like, oh, okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, right.
But no, but to your point, that's exactly right. And I think in my heart of hearts, I think our founding fathers, who were, obviously very devout Christians, they were fleeing the persecution. But I think if you just use that as an example, it's like, hey, well, you left England because of what they were trying to force you to do, or Europe. Well, then, but now you're trying to do your version of that to me. Well, what if I'm Buddhist? What if what if I'm just an atheist?
Yep.
Why can't I buy? I have the same rights. I thought I was a citizen of this country. And to your point, and I love that, I think that still really buttresses and supports the overarching argument we're making here is you've got to start questioning things. You really do. Why, honestly, and look, and I'll just take it one step further. If I can drive my vehicle and I can drink a soda or a water, okay, there's nothing wrong with that, correct? Is that I don't think there's a state that bans me from drinking a liquid while I'm driving, but I can't drink a beer.
No.
The argument is like, well, it's alcoholic. Okay, but I could go to a bar. I could have one beer or two beers at the bar and get in my vehicle, and that's still fine as long as I'm. So we have a standard. The standard is whatever the legal limit is in your state. Well, then what does that matter if I'm, sitting at a table or if I'm driving in my vehicle? I'm either below that. I either meet that threshold or I don't. Plain and simple.
Well, and and like you were saying, if I could just play devil's advocate for 2 seconds, because this will only feed our point is I could hear people as soon as you said that. I can hear people, well, somebody's going to abuse that. Yeah.
It would happen anyways.
That's human nature is humans are going to abuse stuff. And no, it's not fair when somebody abuses that and hits a minivan with kids and everybody dies. No, that's not fair. But you're not going to stop that by giving rules that they're not going to follow anyway.
Well, but hang on. And here's the other devil's advocate to the devil's advocate. You're talking about
a lot of devils in here.
Yeah,
we're incepting now. This is Inception. Layers and layers.
Yeah, exactly. Which layer of devil's advocate are we at right now? Is this the first six, the second six, or the third six? I don't know. But but to your point, is like your whole thing was focused, and my conversation before that was focused on the individual committing the action. Well, what about? So you're going to pass a law that it pertains to people who have nothing to do with it at all? Like, in other words, like, people are going to do it anyway. Well, what about the people who aren't going to do it? Like, so in other words, there's a shit ton of people, like maybe me. Well, okay, not me, but I'm just going to a bad example.
Yeah.
I know people who live in parts of the country where like they drive the blacktop, they call it, whether it's in the cornfields or out in the farmland. And they'll grab a 12-pack with their buddies and they'll just go drive and they'll just drink and they'll just drive the blacktop, right? These real small, like European-sized roads, through the farm.
I've been there.
Yeah,
are you talking about me when I was in high school? That's like, I know. I mean, maybe not high school. No, never mind, not high school. But yes.
Hey, don't worry. The statute of limitations says definitely. But no. But so what is
that, NSA?
Yeah, but what is the difference there? I mean, and why would you like? Again, if you're going to pass a law that like suddenly condemns or villainizes people from like, hey, if I can drink this drink, let's say this is a beer, right? Let's say it's a beer, and I can drink one beer in the bar and still get in my vehicle and drive. Well, then why can't I do it while I'm driving?
Yeah,
I mean, it really just boils down that. So, and why are we passing laws that? Because one or a small number of people may violate that law, and as to your point, Russ, they're going to do it anyway. so we're just going to condemn everybody else. And Jeremy,
Yep.
you know, I know you would want to chime in. I don't know if this is the time to do it, but
I think that's
with
right
gun
at the
laws,
11th hour.
it's the same thing with so many laws. Like,
Yep.
you like, you know, for all the states who are trying to do all these draconian, like, you know, you can't have this weapon, you can't, like, criminals don't give a fuck about that. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you're only punishing the
Right.
average citizen. And matter of fact, Jeremy, we got to remember this, because some of the new stats are out talking about, you know, like the number of crimes committed. And again, stats can be twisted, and I acknowledge that,
Yep.
you know, at the forefront of what I'm about to say. But the stats, the numbers are really basically showing that actually the law-abiding citizen who goes and gets a permit, whatever the case is actually more responsible than police officers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's I believe the ratio of training is actually exponentially higher, and I
Yeah.
don't remember what the percentage.
well, and it
is,
also
but
goes
it's-
down into
it's
who
a
actually.
lot.
Well, and the percentages when those groups who actually commit crimes,
Yep.
violent crimes
Yeah.
using handguns, da 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 da. So,
Well, and not even to such a high degree. Look at the like. If
hey,
you
your
can-
hair is so cool. I got to bring you full screen. Keep going.
Dude, hell yeah, yep. You look smart.
Yeah, he does.
Thanks. You know what? It's an affectation. I'm not. But anyway, you know. But to your point about police being more more or less responsible. I remember when I was on active duty, there was some stat thrown around. This is a long time ago, so I can't remember the exact stat. I'm sure it's out there. Do your homework. But there was a stat about the most prolific people who ND negligent discharge have a negligent discharge. It's cops.
Yeah.
I handle my guns all the damn time, and I don't have any NDs. You know what I mean? Like I know guys that go to the range every day, and they don't have any NDs. You know, so like, where's the excuse there? You know, they got all the training.
Yeah.
And
For the record, you know,
it's a
Russ.
little messy.
For the record, you know, Russ. You know, we've known Russ for a brief period of time now, not super long. But I'm just going to give him props for using the term ND, negligent discharge.
Hell
It
yeah.
used to be called accidental. Like, no, there's no accident about it.
Yeah.
You-
Well,
It's
there is
you're
a
either
difference.
responsible or you're not.
Yeah, it's an
I
yeah.
I believe there is a difference. Like if you've got some Kyber Pass, you know, test gun that you know, because, and I say this because when I was in theater, I had the sear sheared off of my 240. That was 100% an accidental discharge, and it was ruled as such. It wasn't negligent in any way.
Well, but that's not even an accidental discharge. That's a mechanical malfunction. That's the
mechanical
Right.
failure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that that too again, but see,
There's a lot I could say about
Splitting
that.
hairs.
why weren't you here at the beginning of the podcast? Yeah, Jeremy's trying to put the kiboshes on this. I get you. I see
Hey,
you now.
no, I could get
No,
retardedly
no,
gun
no, no,
snippy
no,
about
no,
this,
no,
I'm
no,
not
no,
going
Next
to.
time.
All right,
Next time.
here's the deal, boys and girls. Let's bring this back into reality. Let's Jeremy, with your permission,
Yeah.
let's give Russ, if you can, take us for like another 5 minutes.
Yep.
Just you alone commentary, and then Jeremy, then we'll come back over to you.
Yeah.
We'll do the outro, and Russ, we'll talk afterwards, like as we kind of do in our after action review. But we've got a lot of other things on the docket. We'll get you back here, and I hope everything went well tonight. But let's give you 5 minutes, because we're at it. Like, we kind of want to keep this a little bit, you know.
Yep.
Well, we're
Mhm.
if I would shut up and let you talk,
We're almost on it.
yeah, we're almost there. All right, Russ, you 5 minutes, and then Jeremy outro.
Yep. So, you know, I don't know all that was said tonight. So I'm sorry if I run over something or rerun over something, or I run completely off the road.
Beat it to death.
But I feel like the temperature of the talk is just continuing to, you know, monitor what's happening around you, give a shit about it, and ask questions, and always, you know, I mean, it's in the title of the book, Civil Disobedience. Do it. Just do that. That's what I feel like we're encouraging a lot of people to just be politely against everything that's happening to you or around you, for that matter, that you don't have any personal responsibility for, because it affects you. You know, if you live in a state that does away with abortion and your whatever your stance is on that, if what that state doesn't line up with that, well, you got to do something about it. Don't just take it.
Mhm.
Don't just like listen to the headline and be like, yeah, okay, well, I'll start believing that now. Don't do that. You know,
Yeah.
if you see somebody higher up the food chain in our political system, or even outside of the political system, and they're acting a fool, you got to challenge them. You gotta you know,
100%.
and maybe they're so high that you can't do it personally. Find the other folks who are like-minded, that want to challenge them, and start challenging. It's not like you're shooting arrows at Mount Olympus. You can walk up to this Olympus and make your stance known. You know, especially with the internet. The internet is a powerful thing, y'all. Whoever's watching this, I want you to know the internet is a powerful thing. If you didn't know that, you have real power with this this thing that we're using to talk to you right now, and you should use it. You should use it to find like-minded folks and make yourselves heard and known for whatever you stand for, because that's what sways things. And just real quick, I just want two little things that I want to touch on. I think that we should have a quick blurb in a future podcast about when did laws stop protecting our rights and start telling us what our rights are. I think that would be a valuable discussion, because laws used to be about protecting somebody. Now it's just, you know, how much are you violated if you do this thing other people don't like? The shift there is, we're making a list.
I'm trying to communicate with Jeremy to write that
Write it
down.
down.
Jeremy's the master of the scribe. Keep going. Keep going, Russ.
And I wanted to make this point earlier when we were talking about the founding fathers. I personally believe with all of my heart that if the founding fathers were kept alive in some mystical art or alien technology from the day that they founded our country until now, I believe that because of the stance that they held through their life experiences and their unification of across more than one person based off of those life experiences, they formed this country. They formed the foundation of this country off of a well thought out and well discussed guideline. And I feel like if they were kept alive throughout all this time and consulted throughout our history on the various issues that come up, I'm not convinced that they would have been staunch to any one thing or another, because guess what? Life changes, people change, cultures change. You know, we're constantly evolving. And I think that as life complicates with things like the internet and technology across other, you know, whether it be weapons technology, car technology, space technology, it's constantly evolving us. And if they were kept alive throughout all this time, they would have seen that evolution and would have adapted, but still stuck to the foundation of what unified them. You know what I mean? And that's being against tyranny and for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard. It's fundamental concept. You're born free, and you need to reject tyranny.
Right.
Wow. Okay, Jeremy, write that last. That actually needs. So, Russ, the next time we have you back, that is going to be I think that's the next podcast, is what you said at the end. And
Nice.
Again, it's a total subjective evaluation of if we could go back in time and put, to use a bullshit adult cartoon, Futurama, if all the founding fathers were the heads in the glass, you know, and they could talk to us now or in the future, how would they view things? So maybe a way to frame that is like, what would they say now? Maybe that's the title, Jeremy. Like, what would the founding fathers say now? Because, you know, Russ, as I was listening to you talk, I just wanted to throw in the urban sprawl. You know, like, you go back in time and look at, like, you know, the questions at hand and the solutions they were coming up with. Could they have predicted the size of the cities? I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe not, you know, I don't know. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, the core concepts of the principles that they were enumerating, it would still hold true. And
Yes.
I agree with you. They might like, okay, well, maybe we
Yep.
need to tweak this a little bit here, tweak that a little bit there, maybe.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, or they say, no, there's nothing to be tweaked here. That still applies
Right.
whether there's 1 million people in your
Yep.
city or 10,000 people in
Yes.
your city. You know,
And
yeah.
and I think
And we already. Oh, sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna compound on that and basically look like there's four natural things, right? That we have right to. Okay.
Mhm.
That's the first is life, the second is liberty, the third is property, and the fourth is the means to defend the earlier three, the former three. We have natural inherent rights to those four. Those are the four main things that the founders recognized as being essential to a society that is built upon on the principles of liberty. Without those things, and without one, there cannot be the others, because each one of those support one another. So
Yes.
that's all I have to say about that.
No, perfect. So I'm going to use my, I'm the guy who's controlling all the buttons. I'm going to
Do it.
use that authority, and that's where we're going to end it on. Jeremy, write that down.
That was a
That is
beautiful note.
that is the next podcast. We'll get Russ on for that, because that's going to lend itself for all these other
Yeah.
conversations. Please write that
Yep.
down. It's
Yep.
it's defending those four principles, because I didn't know where you were going to go with that. And I thought you were going to say, the pursuit of happiness. And I've got my own perspective on that. I mean, like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's kind of a
100%.
Heinleinian perspective, Starship Troopers, but like, God dang it, that would be, so we got to stop it right now, because now I want to start talking about that whole goddamn thing you just mentioned.
Right.
Is
And
that
Russ,
a word?
I can already see you
Heinleinian?
smiling with your nice, what is it? What is it? When your hair's like that, it's all coiffed.
A pump. A pump.
A pomp,
Pompadour.
pompadour. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
What a classy dude.
Yeah. All right. So Russ, you got one last comment, and then we're going to turn it over to Jeremy for the outro. But hey, high five. I just want to say this before we go into your comments in the in the outro. Thanks for making it. I hope we'll talk to you afterwards. We'll have that conversation, but let it be known right now, what Jeremy just said, which ties into what you were just saying, that's going to be the next podcast, and we'll have you, well, not the next one in the sequence, but we'll have that here in the very near future. And that's what we're going to do. We're like, you just made that happen, sir. So you get your last goodbyes, then we're going to come over to Jeremy.
Yeah, that was truly a beautiful statement and such a time-honored one. So I am really excited to come back for that one. But yeah, I mean, I think all that could be said has been said for this particular one. It's a deep, long subject, but just everybody, please do your homework, and thanks for having me on. And so late. I was like, oh my god.
Well, yeah,
Dude,
but you made up for it for how clean shaven and like well dressed and everything you are.
Not only did he make up for
Hang
it,
on,
but
hang on. Before you say, Jeremy, I actually wanted to give you a compliment on your shirt. I really like your shirt, but then Russ showed up, and now I'm not even seeing your shirt. I'm just looking at that hairdo.
No,
we're
we're button up bros. Look at we're button up
okay.
bros. What? But this is a Patagonia, and there's a stain on Patagonia now, and we should talk about that in another podcast too, because I am hella offended about it. So,
dude, I like the flair you put.
Well, maybe we'll do that in the AAR, because I'm about ready for a cigar. So it's time for me to go outside. So as always, we'll do a conference call afterwards. We'll do an AAR. Because I want to hear this Patagonia story, and but I just got to give one last little. Dude, you look so clean cut and nice right now. I mean, like
he came in with the good looks
dirty,
and the
I
good
showered today.
Yeah.
Well, you can't smell me. I mean, it is Texas approaching summer. So
all right.
Nice.
That's enough. Look,
hey,
that's
Jeremy,
enough self-masturbation. All right.
You got it,
guys.
You got it. All right, Jeremy, I'm bringing you solo, and you're taking us out, sir.
All right. So, guys and gals, look. Here's the thing, and there's a couple points I want to hit on, right? Is the first responsibility of every citizen is to question authority. It's on the ticker down there, right? We must do this. The other thing is, look, we if we don't question authority, and we don't then take that information to become active, incentivized, emboldened to pursue these things, ask the hard questions, and affect change, and be the checks and balances we're intended to be. A government unchecked is a government that will overwhelmingly become despotic and destructive of not only itself, but its people. And again, let me please just reiterate the 4 principles, okay, that our founders understood, that I carry with me today and many other liberty-loving people carry today, because they are essential to a liberty-oriented society. Is the first is life, the second is liberty, the third is property, and the fourth being the means to support and defend the former 3. These are essential, and questioning is a fundamental part of supporting and defending the former 3. So with that being said, in absolute gratitude from myself, from Mark, and I would even say even Russ, because Russ loves you guys too.
I do.
I hope you all have enjoyed this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed every episode that we've had so far. We really try to bring the best content to you. And I just want to wrap it up and say, look, everybody, all right? The flame of liberty shall not and will not be extinguished. And on that, I bid you good night and good luck.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching our podcast. We'll talk to you guys offline, but don't forget, there is a contest here. Leave your comments below. We'll have a giveaway here. And
like and subscribe.
Jeremy, seriously, dude, you're getting so good at that outro, dude. I'm like, I'm serious. I'm kind of still goose pimply after that. So
give me chills for sure.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. All right, everybody, be good. Take care. We'll see you on the next episode. All right. Woo!